Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Ben Galyardt. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multifaceted impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. These days, it's not too often you get to have a conversation with a doctor that cares more about finding the root cause of an issue rather than prescribing a medication to treat the symptom that is evident. Dr. Ben Galyardt is the founder and CEO of F8 Well Centers and the Galyardt Method. Dr. Ben is also a world-recognized speaker in neurofeedback and brain regeneration. He leads and teaches his method to all of their new doctors across the country while also working one-on-one with patients. Dr. Ben is passionate about functional medicine, which incorporates the latest in genetic science, systems biology, as well as an understanding of how environmental and lifestyle factors influence the emergence and progression of disease. He has spent the latter part of his life learning these methods from the top name doctors across the country. Dr. Ben has been an expert in functional medicine before it was even called functional medicine, and he's here today on the Freedom CEO podcast. So today I have a very exciting guest that is joining me to really talk about freedom, all within our body, health decisions, which, as you guys know, this is one of my favorite topics. And so without further ado, Dr. Ben Galyardt, thank you for being here on the Freedom CEO podcast today.
Absolutely. So excited. Yeah. When we start thinking about CEOs, it is a lot of pressure. It's a lot of stress. You never leave the office. It's in your head. I'm the CEO. We've got 3 offices. We've got 40 team members. It's a lot. You're going to the bathroom. You're taking a shower. All that, and it's hard on the body. It's hard on your health. And knowing what to do, knowing how to support your body is just crucial, because you can be the most successful, make the most amount of money, all these things, but if you don't have your health, you basically got nothing.
Totally. I could not agree more with that statement. And it's the most important thing that we have. And we need to be investing in all different ways to support our health. So I'm really excited to have you on today, because I'd love to just dive into some topics. I think just a little framework, really important for people to understand. There's Western medicine, Eastern medicine. You are in, today we kind of call it functional medicine. I would love for you to just share, really what is functional medicine and why you chose to go down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're right. There is this traditional medicine, and you can go back. We were just chatting off air about, way back in the early 1900s, there was a decisive effort in the powers that be that have the money, have the ability to make these decisions that, hey, we're going to go down this path of pharmaceuticals, of petroleum-based products, and get away from the things that people have used for hundreds and thousands of years, actually, to be able to get their bodies healthy and keep their bodies healthy. And that really started this whole landslide of way worse health than we really should be having right now. And so that's kind of that traditional medicine, that traditional medical model that I like to call it. You can call it Western medicine, but it's really just this traditional medicine where we're like, hey, you've got this symptom, you take that drug, you do that surgery. And it's what I call a this for that. You got this symptom, take that thing. Where in the functional medicine model, it's really more about a fix what you find.
Right.
So whatever shows up, I don't, I do care, but I really don't care what the diagnosis is. If you're diagnosed with Crohn's or fibromyalgia, or if you've got irritable bowel syndrome, or if you've got an autoimmune disease or whatever, sure, I want to know that if there is a diagnosis, but it doesn't really matter because we're not treating MS. My mom healed her body from MS. I'll tell you that story in a little bit. She never actually treated her MS. She treated the systems that were out of balance, and that's what functional medicine really is about, is fixing the underlying imbalances. You can call it root cause, you can call it underlying imbalances, whatever you want to do, but that really is what true healing is about. You can't heal anything with a medication. Maybe you can kill off enough of a bad bacteria with an antibiotic and then allow the body to overcome that, but there's no healing. You don't take enough of an autoimmune drug, an immunosuppressant, methotrexate, which is low-dose chemo. You don't take enough of that, and then your rheumatoid arthritis goes away. That's not how it works. So that's what we want to get into today, is really how these systems drive the damage that's occurring in the body in the first place, and then what you can do to help uncover those root causes and help treat those root causes, because that's really where the treatment is in the adrenals, in the liver, in the leaky gut, in the microbiome, in the brain, in all these systems is where you have to treat, not in the named disease over there.
It's so important for people to clearly hear this, that what we call Western medicine, like you said, is giving you a medication for a symptom, which that isn't solving anything, right? It's just giving you a Band-Aid solution. And in my opinion, that you might also back me up on, can actually cause a lot more harm in the body, because you are introducing other chemicals, you're introducing things that are actually breaking down different areas of your body that then have different side effects and reactions that then now you need to go treat, which there are many doctors that would be happy to prescribe you something else to now treat a new problem that's come up because of the medication that you were prescribed, versus traditional medicine, Eastern medicine, which I also like to call wisdom medicine, where it's using the earth in a lot of ways to help our bodies repair. And like you said, going to the root cause of the issue. And that's what we want to do. And so I am a huge believer in not just like functional medicine, but like looking at what's naturally around us and our bodies. I don't think we give them enough credit. Your body wants to not just survive, it wants to thrive, but it really functions like a healing machine, right? Like if you cut yourself, your skin, you don't need to do anything to it. You don't need a prescription. Your skin knows, the cells know how to repair. And that's the natural orchestra of the body. And that's really what functional medicine is doing. Like you said, bringing that back into harmony. And it is so, and you brought it up. So actually I want to go here for a second, because when you look at Western culture, Western medicine, the home of arguably the big pharmas, a lot of them around the world, I say often that there's really not a lot of money. We're seeing this more, I think, in a growing industry around holistic being, that it's a growing industry. But the real mega, like the multi-billion dollar industry, is in keeping people sick. And that's a big reason why we put the Band-Aid on, right? And we don't want actually the root issue to go away. We just want you to know how to live with it. Like you said, you'll get prescribed a medication for arthritis. It's not actually going to heal it. It just helps you learn how to live with it. Same thing with like diabetes. Like so many people don't realize you can actually crack diabetes in the body. You can actually have that reverse effect. And
easily.
Easily. Oh my goodness. The doctor is saying easily, guys. Like okay, let's use that as an example, because I think a lot of people either know somebody that has diabetes or they've had that themselves. Tell me, enlighten me here. How easily can reversing diabetes be?
And we're talking type 2 diabetes. Type 1 is autoimmune, where the pancreas has destroyed the insulin producing cells. So with type 2 diabetes, and we've got different stages. There's pre-diabetes, there's diabetes, there's insulin resistance. You can even be all the way to insulin dependent type 2 diabetic, and they used to call it adult onset. But here's the thing: is I'm seeing teenagers now. Because we run A1C, we run all these markers on every single patient that comes in. I'm seeing teenagers that are already in the diabetic range. So it's not adult-based diabetes anymore. It has nothing to do with your age. All it has to do with is where that blood sugar is, and is it too high? Is it averaging too high? So this is one of those times where, let's take a step back and go, okay, we're not blaming the doctors. We're not blaming, any one entity out there, because ultimately, most doctors went to medical school and they were like, man, I want to help people and do these different things. But then they get into this system and get into this model, and they've got 8 minutes to see their patient, and they've got to do the prescription. And a lot of people out there, just like you, have gone in and said, can't I just get a pill? Can I just get a pill for this? I don't want to change what I'm eating. I don't want to change what I'm drinking, what I'm doing. And so, it's just as much the consumer, me and your fault, as it is the doctor and the systems and everything. And if every single person went to their doctor and said, I want you, I always tell my people on social media this, look in the doctor's eye next time you see them and say, how do I fix my autoimmune disease or whatever it is? And if they say, I don't know, or they say, oh, well, we're going to give you this drug that's going to suppress your immune system, but it's going to fix your autoimmune. No, that is not accurate. So, it has to be a revolution where we say, you know what? Every single doctor out there, if they're asked 5, 10, 20 times a day, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this? Eventually, they're going to start looking into how are we actually going to fix this, as opposed to just that magic pill. So diabetes is one of those that every one of our new patients gets a continuous glucose monitor. And this is an absolute game changer. I wrote my second book. It's called Blood Sugar Doesn't Lie. You can grab that on Amazon. And it talks all about the different systems that get super stressed out when the blood sugar is going high, but also too low. So a lot of you guys have been hangry, tired, spacey, you'll get that dip. That causes a lot of issues as well. A lot of women feel it as random anxiety. When that blood sugar goes down and they're just like, holy cow, I'm feeling anxious. That's usually a low blood sugar state. So write that down, guys, if you're taking notes out there. So blood sugar stabilization is actually really simple. You start tracking your blood sugar, seeing why it goes up, why it goes down, eat more of the good stuff, less of the bad stuff, keep your blood sugar steady, and diabetes can actually start going away. And the very high majority of people are able to reverse their diabetic state. And I say state because diabetes is not truly a disease. Diabetes is a state of high blood sugar. Just like you can have high blood pressure and it's a state, you lose weight, you eat better, you start exercising, and your blood pressure comes down. It's not like you had high blood pressure disease and now you don't. It's just a state of high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol. Those are all states, and there's reasons they're there, and there's reasons that you can get rid of those.
I think it's so interesting that you made this clarification, because there's a narrative that when people get diagnosed with something like diabetes or even like MS, that you then even start to take on that persona. And I think of how many people actually get misdiagnosed, right? And they actually start acting out symptoms, even though they actually don't have what they were diagnosed with. And so making that differential that you actually maybe either don't have the disease, but it's a state that you have the ability through choices, through your decisions, that you can change that state. No different than, we can be in a bad mood 1 minute and you can do certain things to be like, I can shift my energy. I can change the state I'm in. A lot of that has to do with, your thought patterns. And I think that's really powerful to understand here. around something like diabetes, high blood pressure, that it is not a disease, and that it is a state, and you have the ability to change that if you're willing to do the work. And you did mention that, there's, I mean, we live in a culture, and it's been this way for a long time, but it's gotten worse, right? Over the last 10 years, where everything is instant, right? We want instant now, instant results. And so magic pills, exactly, but there is something to be said that you are able to heal your body and have the reverse start to happen if you go to somebody like yourself, and start putting in the dedication for your health. Tell me, okay, let's talk about, I'd love to learn a little more why. I know you brought up your mom. You mentioned that she was diagnosed with MS, and I would think maybe that has something to do with your why of getting into functional medicine. How'd that impact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do the quick version here. So when I was in high school, my mom, she was diagnosed with MS, full-blown MS. She had plaquing on her MRI. She collapsed at a football game of mine, and really was in this downward spiral. The next year she had to go on disability. She was school teacher of the year, just amazing lady, would leave at 5:30 in the morning, get home at 5:30 at night, and then grade papers for a couple more hours every night, and just gave it her all. And I really do think, and we can touch on this in a little bit, I really do think it was her body finally said, you know what, we can't do this anymore. And it's like, I'm gonna shut it down. And so she was diagnosed with MS at the time. We didn't really even know what that was. And so they put her on all the drugs and said, you know what, just do the best you can. And it's probably going to be degenerative. And at some point, you're probably going to die from this. So it was like, well, that's not really very exciting to hear. And so my dad ended up retiring in a couple of years. They moved down to this small town in the Ozarks in Missouri. And fortunately, there was a doctor there in this little town of like 10,000 people. Even before it was called functional medicine, he was doing things like this to help get to the root cause. And so he took my mom by the hand and said, you know what, we're going to go through system by system by system and help your blood sugar, help your gut, help your brain, help your body get out of that fight or flight. That's one of the big things I see with autoimmune is almost every autoimmune patient, we do brain maps on everybody. Almost everybody has this high alpha state, which is this fight or flight, going to be this revved up, can't shut it down type of a state. And so they started working through each one of those. She got off all the MS drugs. She gave away her wheelchair. She gave away her cane. This was over 20 years ago. And her last MRI showed no more plaquing. And her neurologist said, you don't have MS anymore.
Wow.
But you're not on the drugs. So we can't call it a success from the drugs, and we can't call it it's healed or anything. So I don't know, I'll just call it a miracle. And now she just turned 80 years old this year.
Wow.
She does granny boot camp. They still winter down in the Ozarks there. And I was talking to my dad a couple of weeks ago before they came back home. They live right by us. And I said, oh, what'd you guys do today? He said, oh, your mom was up on the roof of the cabin blowing leaves out of the gutters.
Goodness.
Is that safe for
no kidding.
Up there? And he's like, no, I asked her the same thing, but she said she's more nimble than most 80-year-olds.
Wow.
So, think about that. If the body can heal from MS, what else can it heal from? If you've had toxicity in your body, and we've had people that have had mold and implants and all types of different things. If you've had toxicity, can your body actually process that stuff out? Sure. If you do enough of the good stuff, get rid of enough of the bad stuff, you can see those miracles. If your body has been damaged, if it's been, you've had obesity, you've had inflammation, all these different things. If you learn your body, just like you were saying earlier, it was designed to function optimally. I'm a hunter, and I go with I've got 4 boys. We go hunting a bunch, and every time we shoot a deer or elk or whatever it is, I sit there and like, holy cow! I mean, this is a beautiful, majestic animal, and I guarantee you, she did not have PMS.
Right.
She did not have migraines. She did not, go, oh my gosh, it's too bright. I need to go lie down in my dark room. She didn't have Crohn's disease and, this chronic irritable bowel syndrome and diarrhea all the time. Why? Because they're out there doing what they need to do day in and day out. They're eating, they're running around, they're doing those things. But what happens when we bring dogs into a human household? What do they get?
Yeah, totally. They get all the garbage.
They get, knee replacements, hip replacements, they get cancer, they get thyroid problems, they get diabetes. And you're like, really? What's that all about?
That's a really good point. I don't think I've ever thought about that. That's a very good point. Well, I mean, you're feeding them all the garbage, also the environment too.
Yep, the air quality, sniffing around at the park, all the glyphosate and everything that they're spraying down there. They're getting that on their paws and then licking their paws and just, they're talk about chemicals. They're getting really saturated, and that's a huge part of the problem. And it's the same thing for us. Do you know how many chemicals the average female is exposed to each time they leave the bathroom in the morning? They leave the bathroom. Have you read that?
To say like I shared with you, I'm like chemical free, toxic free, pretty much like of all things. So in my bathroom, I'm probably not the statistic.
That's the average female.
Yeah, the average female. That's true. Good point. I would have to say probably between your skincare, your toothpaste, your hair shampoo and conditioner, which has an overload of estrogen in the body, which causes all kinds of hormonal imbalances that females don't think about. Your lotion, like you're I don't know, say at least probably 90. Like
it's on average like 160 chemicals the average female is exposed to by the time they leave the bathroom to go to work or wherever they're going each day. And it's just crazy when you start looking at labels, and that is a toxic load that the body has to deal. If you're dealing with autoimmunity, whether that's Hashimoto's or MS like my mom, or lupus or Sjogren's or vitiligo or any of these different ones, when I draw my circle of all the things that can be driving this autoimmune reaction, the environmental toxins is one of those first ones. I had a patient, get this, this is another little miracle story here. I had a patient, she had autoimmune hepatitis, which means autoimmune to the liver. So the body was attacking the liver. She was 23 years old. Her body was attacking it so bad that she was on the liver transplant list.
Wow.
And even if she would have got a transplant, they would have been like, well, it's probably going to attack the next liver as well. Guess where she worked? She worked in a windmill factory. Those big giant windmills that don't really make a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
And she worked in the paint department. Have you ever been to Wyoming?
No, I have not.
So there's a lot of windmills in Wyoming, and it's windy and it's like negative whatever horrible, and the sun's really bright and strong, and that paint has to be like crazy strong on there. And so she was in the paint department getting exposed to all these chemicals, and it was driving. It wasn't necessarily damaging the liver, that wasn't helping, but it was driving this autoimmune reaction, dealing with this environmental toxins, and that's going to keep your body on this oh my gosh, and eventually it starts attacking itself. We were able to help. We got her out of that environment, help her body detox, help the different systems that were out of balance, fix her blood sugar, help her vitamin D, all these things we look at. And within 6 months, her doctor sat down with her and said, hey, all your numbers are fine. I guess we should take you off the liver transplant list.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Which doesn't happen. That doesn't happen for people. And yet you do the right stuff, get rid of the bad stuff, and that's when the miracles can start taking place.
So I know what I tell people, but since you're here, I would love to know, it can be very overwhelming, right? Like when you start thinking about, you open up your fridge, you open up a cabinet, and it's like, where do you start? And some people get paralyzed and then they just don't start because it is so overwhelming. So little by little, you don't do everything at once. What is your recommendation? What would you say are the top maybe 3 things for people to start introduce?
For women out there, you probably have a favorite makeup line, right?
Yes, I do.
Can you say it?
Yes, it's a chemical-free, a toxic-free, animal harm-free company called Crunchy in the United States.
Great. So Crunchy, they're kind of like Beauty Counter and some of these other ones that have really gone down that path of looking at all those things. So there's different ones out there, and reach out if you want to grab Crunchy. you can get a hold there. But that's a great place to start. Look what you're putting on your skin, look what you're putting in your hair, and you don't have to go and throw everything away. You don't go to the fridge and the pantry and throw it all away. But do this every time you run out of something. Look at it and you go, okay, is there something better that I could get than this? The deodorant that I'm using right now, Old Spice. There's scent to it, there's chemicals to it, there's aluminum to it, there's different things to it. Is there something better? Well, okay, maybe the next level you could go to like Tom's. And Tom's isn't maybe the best, but it's a little bit better. Or your laundry detergent runs out and you go, you know what? 7th generation is pretty easy to get at most locations. And it's like 90% better than Tide. Okay, so I'm going to do 7th generation, even though I could do like borax and baking soda and makeup. That's not realistic in a lot of people's world.
Sure.
So every time you run out of something, just start thinking about, okay, what can I do to get better? Just like in business, what do you do in business? You look at your P&Ls every month, and you look at your budgets and your numbers and all these different things. And you go, okay, where can we improve? Okay, those marketing dollars, that ad, our Facebook ad lady, she knows that if it's over $10 per ad, she knows, oh, we're cutting that, and she's learning from it and looking at what colors and what font and all these things do better, and then getting another one in, and if that one stays below $10, great. And it's the same thought process, and you just keep working through each one of the places in the household that you can get better, whether that's cleaning products, whether that's body care, or whether that's food and drink.
Yeah, I love that. When you run out, what can you do better? Like, how are you going to replace that? And that just becomes tangible. It's like little by little. And I've been at it for over 10 years, so when people sometimes hear like everything I'm doing, it's like, well, I didn't start there. It was a little by little. And I remember, I'll just share with you a little story for myself where I was like, the one thing I cannot give up is my perfume. I used to wear Giorgio Armani Acqua di Gio since I was like a teenager. That was like my thing. And like, it was my scent, we all have like our scent. And there was one day I was in the gym, I shower at the gym and get ready there. And then I went out to work and I left my perfume, I guess, in the car. And so I had an essential oil that I love. And I was like, I'll just put this on for right now. Well, the next day, as in part of my routine, the same thing happened. I went to the gym. I didn't put the perfume back in my bag. So I did the same thing. And then, of course, you get in the car and you're like, those are competing. I'm not going to do that. Like, that'll smell weird. Right. The third time I went to go spray my perfume, the reaction I had just from like those few days, I could really, not just even smelling it, I felt it like in my throat, like the chemicals. And
constriction,
right. And in my head, I was like, what's really the difference between my perfume and Windex? An extreme, yes. One is softer smelling, but both are chemicals. And that's, for me, was like an aha moment where your air freshener, I'm like, you would not use Windex in your diffuser. You would not put Windex little puff sprays on your, on the wall that you see like people with their air fresheners. Yep. And really, when you stop and you think about it, it's kind of what you're doing. It's softer, so it's not as harsh, but it's still these chemicals, so just things like that, where you just start to think like, what could I trade out? Yep. And like you said, when you are finished something, that's a great opportunity to introduce a better, a cleaner product. Yep. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. The more you do it. And over the years, you'll just be like, all of a sudden, I don't have pretty much any chemical products in my life, you know? Yep. And of course you can get complicated. Even as I'm hearing you talking about animals and hunting, my brother shares the same. He is a fellow hunter. And so I'm versed enough anyways, you know, in not just like the hunting, but even just like the ritual and thanking the animal for the food and whatnot. But you also start to feel what the animal has also eaten, which really gets into the impact of like what we're consuming. And it's that saying that we are what we eat, but really we are what they eat. You know, and the hormones that are pumped in and the grains and the corn and the lectins that implode your body, make you inflamed, you know, and then that's what we are consuming, you know? So there's so much that you can be thinking about around how you can improve. The cool thing is that there's always an area to improve. So I would love to know, tell me like your method. You created a method that's specific to you. And now you've got your F8 well centers. Yeah. And they're kind of all over, right?
Yeah, so we have 3 brick and mortar offices, 2 in Colorado and 1 in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay. And at those facilities, we bring in both the neurology and the functional medicine side. So we do what's called a brain map quantitative EEG, just like doing an EKG of the heart, but we're doing the electrical activity of the brain. And we're able to see ADD, autism, Asperger's, Alzheimer's, anxiety, depression, insomnia, all of these different patterns that we can see that actually can be coming from your brain. So many times, even in the functional medicine space, we're like, oh, you can't sleep, try this melatonin, try this magnesium, and we look for this physiological change, right, which most of the time it's actually a neurological issue. ADD, yes, there's times where, okay, you shouldn't be having your red dyes and all those things that can contribute to ADD, and, you know, blood sugar, you know, if they're eating a bunch of carbs and things like that, that can affect. But most of the time, that's not the cause of the underlying ADD. It's actually a neurological imbalance, so much so that in 2013, the FDA approved the brain map as a diagnostic tool, specifically looking at ADD. And so there's a pattern that we can see, even adult ADD, we're able to help people by training those brainwave patterns to do something different. And just like I was saying earlier, anybody with autoimmune, you have to look at the brain, because a huge part of this is going to be in this major fight or flight state. It's going to keep that immune system on this red alert, attack, and it's going to be overloading the body to where it says, hey, we're gonna attack our own tissue. So that's one side of it, is that neurologic side. A lot of people with sleep issues, and this is more of that this for that versus fixing what you find, because this for that can actually be in the functional medicine space, in the natural medicine space. There's a lot of people that go, oh, you can't sleep? Let me give you this melatonin. And then you stop taking the melatonin, and then you can't sleep again. So they didn't fix anything. So you can still do natural things, but be more allopathic, meaning you're just giving them something for a symptom. So in our model, it's all about continuing to dive deep until we find those root causes. And then in the blood work, we throw a comprehensive blood panel out, looking at inflammatory markers, hormones, autoimmune markers, blood sugar, leaky gut, fatty liver, all these different things. And then we bring those together. We'll do what's called neurofeedback for brain changes, either in office or remotely. And then every one of our new patients gets a continuous glucose monitor. This is an absolute game changer. If you've never seen one of these, they go just on the back of the arm. It's this little patch, and it tells you 24/7 what your blood sugar is doing. And if you don't know where your blood sugar is and you don't know what it is, I guarantee you it's not right, because if you're not tracking it, you know, unless you're literally sitting there eating nothing but lean wild game, vegetables, and a bunch of good fat, you know, that is never going to be stabilized. And even people, you were asking about intermittent fasting earlier. A lot of women, a lot of people that are already adrenal deficient, adrenal dysfunction, adrenal fatigue, Intermittent fasting actually can make it worse, and it can drive every time that blood sugar is starting to go low. We bring the adrenals in. They tell the liver to release glucose. So every time that happens, it's going adrenals, 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 and it's going to ultimately lead to more stress to the adrenal glands with intermittent fasting. So it really depends on the person. People ask, should I go keto? Should I go paleo? Should I do intermittent fasting? I go, well, it depends on your body, depends on what your blood work shows, depends on what your blood sugar does throughout the day. All these different things. My 18-year-old, he's just graduating. Today's actually his last final.
Cool.
So, yeah, congratulations,
yes, congratulations.
buddy. And he put a continuous glucose monitor on about 8-9 months ago, and he lost 30 pounds. And it wasn't like he was overweight. You wouldn't have looked at him and go, "Oh, that's a chunky kid," but he was just still eating like a growing teenage boy, and he wasn't growing anymore. And so just by tracking that blood sugar, working through some of these systems, his body was like, great, I don't need this extra fluid, this puffy. So many of you guys out there are just kind of puffy and inflamed, and you're holding fluid. The body's solution to pollution is dilution. So you're holding on to more toxins, and then your body holds on to fluid to try to dilute those.
So much goodness you just introduced to this conversation.
Sorry, I went a little much.
No, I love it. The solution to pollution is dilution.
Yes.
I love that. That's so powerful. I also think you'd be happy to know I just ordered actually a glucose monitor, one of the patches I have to prick your blood. So I have that.
Yep.
But that's when I decide I'm going to go in and do it versus like the actual monitoring. So I'm really excited, and maybe we'll have to, I don't know, we could use me maybe as like a guinea pig, but come back in like 6 months, because I'm telling everybody I wasn't necessarily going to do that today, but that is what I just did. It's coming from the US, so I will be getting it this week for that reason. You know, I shared with you offline, and all my followers know and listeners know that I removed my breast implants after 11 years last year, and my thyroid is off. I just got my own comprehensive panel blood work back. And I can feel that, you know, like if you're in tune with your body, you can just know the struggle is real. I need to be doing some detoxing as well and having chemicals being flushed out. But that was like the biggest thing for me is, so here's how I noticed it is I would wake up in the morning and I use ketone strips to see if my body was in ketosis in the morning, which after, 8 hours, 12 hours, I really should be in ketosis, and I'm not. And so that for me was a really weird, like, why is that not happening? I love that you did bring up the fasting piece, because I have done a ton of fasting in the last 5 years, from 48 hours, 36 hours, even up to 5 days, and doing like a cellular cleanse. And I was doing 5 days about twice a year just to totally rejuvenate, eat the toxins out of your cells. And at that 72 mark, that's really when the new white cells show up in your body through fasting. Obviously, men and women were built different, and therefore there's, not as much of the hormonal thing to take into effect around the effect it has on the female body. But still, I'm in this inflamed, my adrenals are shot. So even as you're saying earlier, if your adrenals are shot, you shouldn't be fasting. I'm like, so I'm doing everything the doctor's telling me maybe not to.
The number one stressor to the adrenal glands, is actually your blood sugar swings, especially dips. So again, anytime that blood sugar is going down and crashing down, then you're stressing out those adrenals. And here's one more tidbit for everybody out there that's been doing intermittent fasting or tried it or like, it's not for me. Most people are doing intermittent fasting the wrong way. Intermittent fasting should actually be it's a convenience thing, because so many people already were kind of skipping breakfast anyways, or they're just like, we see college kids all the time and they're like, I don't really eat breakfast. I intermittent fast. I'm like, before you ever even heard about that, you probably were skipping breakfast. Just because you skip breakfast doesn't mean you're intermittent fasting.
Sure.
And so actually, metabolically for the body, eating in the morning has lots and lots of value.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to intermittent fast, finish eating by like 4 or 5 o'clock,
Right.
and then circle back around till like 8 or 9 in the morning and do it that way. But the whole going till 12 or 1 o'clock, again, it's a convenience thing because people don't get done with work till 5 or 6 or 7, and they go and work out, or they have to go to a soccer practice or whatever it is, and they get home and they eat at 7 or 8 or 9, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry at that point. And so it would be better for the body. And this is actually having to do with the brain. My first book that I wrote was called Rebuild Your Brain, Stop the Damage, Start the Repair. And I talk a lot about different things that can cause damage, but how to fix it. And one of the things that happens when you are in a fasted state throughout the night, the brain can actually repair and rebuild. And so if you're eating at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night and then trying to go to bed, your body's focused on digesting and not rebuilding that brain. So if you have Alzheimer's in your family, if you have memory issues, brain fog, dementia, any of those things, it's going to be better to stop by like 5 o'clock, 5:30 and be done eating, even if you're not intermittent fasting, just to give your digestive tract a break and actually give your brain an ability to heal.
Well, some good things to take into consideration to change up definitely in the routine. I'm not a late eater myself. I try really like not having anything after 7 o'clock, but the idea of reverse kind of intermittent fasting, that's definitely interesting. I'm going to have to try that one out and incorporate that. I do like that.
And when you get your continuous glucose monitor, you're going to be able to see. And if you start seeing these, and so send me some screenshots, I'll let you know what I'm seeing too. So when you start seeing, oh, it's kind of going down and then the body brings it back up, that is usually going to be where, okay, adrenals have to kick in every time to do that, versus if you're just kind of nice and steady in there, that's not bad. Another thing that I like to do is kind of building on, remember the bulletproof coffee was popular for a while. So I'll actually put in some bone broth, some chocolate. I like the Ancient Nutrition chocolate bone broth. That's my favorite. You can do some collagen powder, some things like that. And I don't drink coffee, but I'll do tea. And so I'll do some hot tea. I'll put that in. I still like to put some grass-fed butter in there and blend that up and then drink on that throughout the morning. And that really, I've found that really keeps my blood sugar steady. If you look at my when I'm wearing a CGM, if you look at my glucose levels, it's like flatline. There's no change. And then even I've figured out what to eat for lunch where you can't even hardly tell a meal happened. And that's where even we were talking about type 2 diabetics, type 1 diabetics that are insulin dependent can actually stabilize their blood sugar 100 to 140, 95% of the time if they eat the way they need to eat.
So when you see this line stay steady, that is where you're really going to start to see, you brought up your son. This is where you're going to start to see those physical changes in the body, like starting to lean out happen.
Yeah.
So when you see a spike, or is there like, when you think about nutrition, because obviously that's everything in this conversation, a lot of it anyways.
Yeah, what you're putting in your mouth.
Putting in your mouth is going to have that effect, the spike or negative. Are you then going, okay, I see this spike. I maybe didn't eat enough protein with my meal. And you would know then the next time to just watch your tracker, introduce more protein, eliminate. And, for me, it goes without saying, we're not talking about any type of processed foods. Like if you're doing that obviously needs to be eliminated. For me, it's, you're eating whole foods, you're eating real food. If you can be eating organic all the time, that's obviously even better. But is that what you're looking at, is going, okay, introducing more protein into the body and eliminating
So, it's not just protein. Fat as well is one of the things that we've been doing this, but we did finger prick glucose monitoring for about 5 years. And then when we were able to get the CGMs, we switched over to that a few years back. And so we've looked at tens of thousands of people's glucose levels. I'm going to say more than probably any office in the world that does this type of work. We've been able to see it, and my team has been able to see exactly what changes. But here's the deal. In my blood sugar book, I don't have a diet. I don't have a menu, a meal plan, anything, because it's way more individualized than that. Sure. Some people, any amount of rice makes their blood sugar spike.
Right.
Quinoa, for a lot of people, makes their blood sugar go up. Beans are supposed to be like this. Oh, there's proteins and all of that in there. And beans are one of the worst things that we see. But then somebody may be able to have a little bit of rice.
Right.
A lot of people, sweet potato is worse than white potato for their blood sugar.
Yeah.
And you're told every day, sweet potato. And yet you're spiking blood sugar. Oatmeal for cholesterol, that's this huge scam that's been put on society. And oatmeal is one of the worst things for blood sugar for some people. Right. Other people could be okay, and that's why I don't have a menu or meal plan. I can say eat nothing but wild game and fish, and vegetables, green leafy vegetables, cabbage, things like that, and some good quality fats. And you do that 3 meals a day for the rest of your life. Great, but guess what? That's not realistic in most worlds. And so then with this continuous glucose monitor, you figure out what is good and what works. And then you start trying different things. So instead of like, how much protein do I need to mix with this thing? You go, okay, here's my chicken and broccoli and avocado. Now I'm going to add in a little bit of X, Y, or Z, retest it and see what happens. And if it goes up too high, then okay, it's that food. But if your chicken, broccoli, and avocado works, then you don't have to worry about, it's one of those things. You already know that works. So it's whatever so it's trial and error.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting. Like, and again, you can take this as in depth as you want, but like your ancestral line and eating for your blood type and like finding out like different regions, depending on where you actually come from, your body's going to be able to metabolize certain things better. And I just got that done as well, because I'm so fascinated. This is like, for some people, this might be like biohacking on a whole other level, but I just think it's really important. Like, we spend our whole lives with the time that we get in this body, and like, we should know it, and like you said, what works for you is not necessarily going to work for me. And we really need to be in tune with that. I was using like, Asian culture, for example, like they eat rice at every single meal. And a lot of them, they're still known, as a slender culture. If I ate rice at every meal, I would not at all be slender.
What's really interesting though, is that, and I don't know if it's just what happens when people move to North America and the U.S. and start eating our rice or what, but I've seen, even most people that have come up from Mexico and other Latin America countries, things like that, beans, rice, corn tortillas, those things, huge spikes. Even people from Japan, Asian descent, rice will still make them go up. So I still haven't figured out like, hey, I'm going to, test you here, and then I'm going to send you to Japan for 6 months and eat over there and see if it works the same or not. But, it is pretty consistent that, most people in the United States, at least, their blood sugar is out of balance for similar things. It's interesting.
Wow. And again, I'm not aligning my thought with your thought on this. I look at the United States, where we are huge on pesticides and spraying our food, and GMO, which is, fake food and not real. It's no different where you go to like Italy, like that's like part of my background, and having dairy or having bread dairy and gluten, like those two things over in Italy is very different than here in North America, right? And so again, it's like looking at the quality of like what you're actually eating. So it doesn't surprise me to hear like somebody could come over from Japan, eat rice 3 times a day here, and all of a sudden their blood levels, but also their body composition is going to dramatically change, because they're having this inflammatory response. The body's going, chemicals fake, like, get it out. And that's the other thing, I think a lot of people to really start recognizing your body's always communicating with you and it is trying to tell you something, like indigestion, having gas, like these are not normal things. And we think that, like even you brought up beans earlier, beans, the magical fruit, the more you eat, the more you chew. And people think it's funny and that it's healthy, full of fiber and all of that. They're not good. They're like, and some people can stomach it. Yes. But if your body is passing gas like that, it's telling you you're hurting me. Stop it.
Here's optimal digestion. So you should get hungry and you're going to eat. And then you don't think about digestion until you have to go to the bathroom. You go to the bathroom and it comes out and it looks like, peeled banana, similar consistency and about that size, a solid piece or two, and then you're hungry and you eat again. But there should be no gas, bloating, indigestion, heartburn, reflux, gurgling, rumbling, grumbling, diarrhea, constipation. You shouldn't have to unbuckle your pants, or a lot of the women nowadays that are like, wow, I look pregnant again. And if you have any of those things going on, that's not normal, not optimal digestion. It may be average.
Right.
Average US, Canadian, whatever, it may be average, but it is not optimal. And so if you have any of those things going on, dig deep, figure out what it actually is.
And if you need some help, you know who you can go to. And so, okay, I am really excited to learn this actually about you, is that you are not in Canada, but earlier you mentioned online, virtual. Yep. So is that's a possibility for somebody who's in Canada or on the other side of the world, that they can still come and see?
Absolutely. So Canada, a lot easier than some other places. We drop ship actually a blood kit to you, Canadian. Okay. I don't even know, I want to call it health insurance up there. Has nothing to do with health, and it's a mess. So your doctor's not going to be able to run all the markers that we want to see, but for a few $100s, we're able to get you a kit. If you're on the eastern half of Canada, you go to DynaCare. It's kind of like a LabCorp in the States, and you get that drawn and then ship it back. It goes FedEx overnight, goes back to the US. We test that blood work. If you're in the western part of Canada, then there's certain labs that we know we can get you into over there, and we can do supplements to Canada, and we're actually working on getting the continuous glucose monitors to Canada as well, and have been able to get to a few people there. And then even if there is an anxiety issue, an insomnia issue, things like that, we can get our home neurofeedback unit to Canada as well. So just totally opened up the Canadian market, and fortunately we're able to do everything the same that we do with people in the States. And then with that, we're going to be able to monitor it and track it and make sure people are getting the results that they want. If somebody's outside of North America, then it gets a little bit trickier. We don't have connections with Ireland blood labs and Dubai and Australia and all these things. So I will give you a list of, hey, here's your markers that you need to have run. And now we need to go ahead and get that done locally. However you do it, you got to bribe somebody, you got to, however you got to get that done. And then I will sit down with you and go over and review those and let you know exactly what you need to do. You may be able to get supplements shipped in from us. You may not. So you might have to do some legwork on your end to find supplements in the EU is going to be different than getting supplements in Australia and some of those different things. So I'll tell you exactly what you need to be taking, and you may need to do some legwork there. So even outside the US and Canada, there are ways to get done. It just takes a little bit more work on your end. But otherwise, we take people by the hand. We say, you know what, your health is the most important thing. You know, we've got, you know, your spiritual life, your family life, and your, you know, and your health is right there with all those, because it's really hard to have the other two without your health. And if you're in chronic pain, if you're in chronic digestion, if you can't walk because you have MS, whatever it is, you have to dig deep, figure out those underlying imbalances. And that's what true healing is about. If you cover up a symptom, stop doing whatever you did to cover it up, and it comes back, you didn't heal anything.
Right.
You've got to fix the why. Implant illness from implants, that's a why. Yeah. But then you got to go another layer deeper and go, well, why aren't you clearing those out? Why aren't you detoxifying? Because there's a lot of women that don't really have any issues, you know, that have implants and they don't. There's a lot of women that live in a moldy house and don't even realize what's going on. But there's a lot that do have symptoms. There's so many different issues out there, and you look at the foods and all these things, and never compare yourself to anybody else. It's not fair. It's not right. You know, sometimes it is, you know. My wife has to eat a lot cleaner than the average person, but she's had multiple autoimmune disease. We lived in a moldy house. She, you know, was on her deathbed a couple times. You know, lots of different issues, and she's going to have to pay attention and be that much more aware than the average person. But you know, she gets to work out 6 days a week now, and had 4 boys at home, and 9+ pounders, and they were all healthy and happy and vibrant and everything. And so, you know, the body can heal if you do enough of the good stuff, take out enough of the bad stuff, and that's how we start getting to see those miracles.
Totally. I mean, and this just excites me because of how virtual you are, it becomes very accessible. And when there's accessibility, for me, there's no excuse. So this is like a perfect opportunity. And however you're tuning in today, everything's going to be linked up in the show notes. You know, make sure you follow Dr. Ben Galyardt online as well on Instagram. He's always there putting out great content that's going to add value for you as well. And, you know, you said about like the symptoms, and I just want to mention this because I think we sometimes don't realize how much better we could feel because we don't have that yet to compare it to. So even though you may not have symptoms showing, and yes, some people, they could be in a moldy house. And I think of those people, or people who say, I eat McDonald's every day and I feel just fine. You don't have anything to compare that to. And until you actually start shifting up and making some of these changes, you start realizing, wow, I actually didn't feel that good, and how much better you start feeling. So I just encourage people, the goal should always be like, when we know better, we can do better. And therefore it's like, let's evolve as humans. Let's take care of our health, our bodies, that we have this one to live in, you know, and like you have said a few times, without our health, we have nothing. And so even if you feel fine or you feel okay, for me, the goal is to continue to evolve in my health. And how can I optimize? How can I level up? How can I introduce something that's better? You know, and circling back to earlier, introducing chemical-free products and food into your life, where it's like, just start with that one. So I would love for people, you know, make sure you connect with Dr. Ben Galyardt, look him up, get connected, learn. Hopefully you've learned something here new today around blood sugar, that you can reverse a disease, in quotes, I say that, and it's actually a state, and you have that power and the ability to do that. And overall, you're going to just improve your health, which improves your life. So I have one final question for you, because you're on the Freedom CEO podcast. So this is it.
Go for it.
How has you taking ownership over the decisions in your life brought you freedom?
Yeah, I think, you know, and it's even the line between saying I take responsibility versus I am responsible for what happens in my life. And there's even a line there where if you take responsibility, well, it's, you know, still kind of happening to me, and that responsibility, but I am responsible for what happens in my life. And you know, that can be on a lot of different levels, even on a spiritual level, whether, you know, that's, you know, you're thinking about listening to the universe or the Holy Spirit, or, you know, and like, oh, well, that car crashed into me today. But was there a split second this morning where something said, oh, hey, run back in and grab that.
Right.
Or, oh, get out of the house a minute earlier. A split second and that car wouldn't have crashed into you. And so nothing just happens to us. If you are connected, if you take and have that responsible thought process of this is my life. I am responsible for the good, for the bad, for the ugly. Not to beat yourself up, not to guilt yourself. But once you see it from, I am responsible for my life, and I'm responsible for not putting up my boundaries, and I'm responsible for taking too much and not dealing with things in the moment. I've got an issue with and confrontational tolerance, and so there's things in my life that I've allowed, and I'm responsible for happening in my life because I didn't do the things that need to happen. So that's what I just love the thought of, is I'm responsible for my life. And then that means, okay, the past is the past. And yet in this moment, I'm responsible for my happiness. I'm responsible for the kind words that I can say to you. I'm responsible for, dealing with the negative things that come our way in a way that is edifying and building other people up and still isn't just a woe is me and life is so bad.
I love that. So powerful, an incredible way to close out. And just thinking about that, take responsibility for your health as well. So Thank you so much, Dr. Ben Galyardt. Did I say that right? I almost got all the way to the end. I'm like, for those tuning in, I was so stressed out about saying Dr. Ben's last name. I don't know if I can do it again, but I thank you for being here today. Really, really appreciate just your time and your wisdom to share on the MCO podcast. So thank you.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review, as it will help my show reach other people as well. You know what to do. Download this episode, click the like and subscribe button. If you feel like spreading more love, hop over to Instagram and share today's show in your stories. Remember to tag Shane Vidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.